I'm Jacob. I've been a fitness coach since I was 19 years old. Started in person at a corporate gym. Then I became a personal training manager. Now I'm a full-time online coach. Here's some of my client folders I've saved up over the years. And the purpose of today's video is I want to justify and demonstrate why I believe you can build more muscle in less time with less pain without having to become a chase the burn, gym bro, Chad, chase the pump, chain in your mouth kind of dude, all right? If you're just a normal guy and you're just not really that proud of your body right now and you know you could do better and you want to feel more self-confident, feel like you're being the best version of you and your physique is a reflection of that, then this is for you. All right, and the way I'm going to be able to demonstrate this is I have to really double click on my story, on my journey, and what I've learned in the process from being 150 pounds, skinny, had no idea what I was doing, to then making every mistake in the book that I possibly could, to then actually coming out on the other end 5 years later, figuring this stuff out, feeling, building 20 pounds of muscle, feeling very self-confident, and just feels a lot of clarity on what he's doing in the gym and the trajectory that he's on. Okay, if you're in this more of a beginner stage, right, and maybe if you're like me, you don't really know why you're doing what you're doing in the gym. Like, you kind of have an idea, like, you just pick stuff up, pull stuff around, push stuff, and your muscles grow, right? At a super basic level, sure. But, if you kind of look around and, I guess that's the only option you normally have when you're a beginner. You just kind of look around and you do what other people are doing. So you're kind of just like a parrot, right? And if you ask people, like, hey, like, what you got today? Like, what you doing in the gym? You're like, yeah, well, I got chest today. I'm like, yeah, I got back. I got arms. I'm like, oh, really? Like, okay, like, what kind of exercises are you doing? You're like, yeah, well, I'm doing barbell bench. I'm doing bent over rows, right? I'm doing barbell squat, right? This is super common. All right, okay, like, how long are you going to be here for? Right? And they'd be like, well, I got like 6 to 8 exercises. I got 3 to 5 sets. I got 10 to 15 reps. Exercises. Boom. 10 to 15 reps, right? Super, super common. Okay, when I was a beginner, this is the kind of stuff that I did because this is what everybody around me was doing. This is all I knew, right? And I was just looking at this yesterday. I used to do this Thor's workout. I'll just look online, right? And like, look at this thing. 5 sets on pull-ups, 20, 15, 12, 10, 10. 5 sets of 20 push-ups. 4, 12, 4, 12, 4, 25, 20, 15, 15. Chest, barbell bench, 8 sets, 12, 10, 10, 8, 8, 6, 4, 4, 4. It's like so much. It's no wonder my body was literally always screaming. Okay, I was in a constant state of fatigue, and that was like all I knew because that's what I learned, and that led to some really bad habits. I ended up getting to the point where my shoulder blades, like every single night sleeping, my shoulder blades were in constant pain. I became dependent on pre-workout to even go to the gym because my body was literally like depleted of energy. And I wish that I could just talk to my past self and just tell him what I'm telling you guys today in this video, and I would have been able to skip so much of this and get to where I am a lot quicker, and I would probably be steps ahead of where I even am today had I not gone through had to go through all of that. But yeah, I like to call these are like the meathead training programs. So like, this is kind of like just like throwing stuff at the wall and like hoping that something sticks. Right? There's no rationale behind it. It's just the brute force method, right? If you're a noob and you're doing any kind of physical activity, right, or like any kind of lifting, like yeah, you're gonna build some muscle, right? But just because there's a way doesn't mean it should be the way, right? Especially if there's a lot of those consequences, like it is super hard. Like hard things are harder to stick to, right? And hard things don't feel good, especially when you're injured. And when you get injured like I got, you can't even work out, right? So this is like the meathead training programs, right? And I kind of like to use this little metaphor. But imagine you're kind of, you haven't really figured everything out yet and you're trying to make progress. The way I see it is there's a couple routes that you could take, right? Let's say like this was like the door to progress. Oops. So, right, so this is like the door to progress, right? And you're over here. Oops. Right, and you got, let's say you got this this battering ram, right? So it's this huge battering ram, right? And you could get through the door, but it's gonna take some brute force. It's gonna be messy, right? There might be wood shards going all over the place, right? It might take a lot of these big hits, right? It might take a while, right? You might get somewhere, but it's not gonna look pretty, and it's gonna probably hurt. It's gonna even hurt your muscles just brute forcing your way through here. Okay, when I was in this stage, right, I had kind of, this is all I knew, so this is all I did. I was drenched in sweat every workout. This volume all started to bubble up on me, and one day I got a very serious shoulder injury. Okay, I was doing these barbell presses. I was doing it on my own, and I like got stuck at the bottom, and I was like fighting this weight at the bottom, and so finally somebody ran over and he helped me up, and I was like, man, my shoulder's kind of hurting. All right, but I didn't think anything of it, so I went through the rest of my workout. I was still doing high volume, right? I think it was like this actual, I don't think it was this day, but it was like literally right around this time. And I remember I was doing this exact exercise, and I was like, man, my shoulder was screaming. It actually might have been this exact day. And it was just, I was just trying to push through the pain, and eventually I woke up and I was like, man, I literally can't even get up. Like my shoulder was in so much pain. I couldn't work out, and I was totally out of the gym for a month. And in this month, I just kind of told myself, I was like, man, I tell myself I want to be a great coach, but I don't even know how this stuff works. Like, I'm just going on YouTube, going on Instagram, just kind of doing what everybody else is doing, looking up little technique tips, right? Try this exercise type of stuff. Like, couldn't say I actually knew, right? So I spent this month, and I'm so grateful. I ended up finding my coach, Chris Beardsley. Okay, so I was really trying to dive into the actual science behind muscle growth and the actual physiology, and I found Chris Beardsley. And like when I first found him, what was really enlightening for me was to hear, like, he wasn't just like a contrarian. He didn't just have an opinion. Okay, what Chris does is he just researches, and he just shares the facts, and he shares the findings. And when I started listening to him, a lot of it was very complicated, right? If you listen to it, like it's really hard to digest. But at this point, I had been a personal trainer for a very long time, and I was just at the cusp where I could kind of understand what he was saying. Didn't fully understand it at all, but I had committed myself. I was like, you know what? I got to figure this stuff out. And I totally committed myself for that month. I binged everything that Chris had, listened to all the podcast episodes, started reading his FAQs, started reading his research, and I really started to, realize how flawed some of the training tactics I was using were. Okay, so what Chris was saying was totally different from what I had known. Right? He was saying stuff like low volume. Okay? 4 to 7 reps. Right? Like long rest periods. Stable exercises. He said, don't chase the burn. Don't chase the pump. I was like, what? It's like, this is all I ever knew. But it totally, I finally got out of my injury and I started practicing some of these training methodologies, and that light bulb in my head went off, and I totally realized how true this was. And it's going to make more sense as I break down more of the details of what I learned and how it works. But I was literally shocked. I was like, this is a whole paradigm shift, and not that many people know about it. And even if you told some people about it, most people if you happen to stumble on Chris Beardsley's page, you probably wouldn't be able to understand most of it because it's complicated physiology and stuff. So I was like, man, this is crazy. So immediately I started training with these new principles, and I got to spend way less time in the gym. I went from 6 days a week, like 2 hours each session, to 4 to 5 days a week, an hour each session. My workouts were less painful, had more energy to just spend towards the other areas of my life because I have a lot of other things that are important to me too. And so I got to spend less time, and I saw more progress. So my physique actually took an upgrade. I actually started to build more muscle, like new definition. It was like the newbie gains all over again. So I was like, how is this possible? And I was like, man, I gotta share this with more people. So that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, and the way that I like to see it is this is like trying to get through the door, and instead of using a battering ram, the same thing. Okay, instead of using a battering ram, you're just using a key, right? So you're like a locksmith. Okay, and you just got this key now. Okay, so when you're using a key, it's a lot more efficient. It's not messy. It's strategic. It's efficient. It's effective with your time and energy. You can also move faster this way, right? So if I had learned these training strategies earlier, and if it didn't take me, 3.5 years of messing up and just being, literally it's like banging your head into a wall, like hitting a plateau, but then just like grinding against the wall over and over. Whereas if I had just known this from the jump, I could have gone through two or three doors. I'd probably be ahead of where I am right now. Okay, so you want to be a locksmith, not a battering ram. All right, and I like to think of it this way, right? So it's like, if this was pain and this was progress, okay, what I did was I went through a lot of pain to get like some progress, and it took me a long time. Right? So like I was somewhere over here. Right? Once I started actually learning how this stuff works, I could actually make more progress. I actually saw more progress with less pain. So it's like somewhere over here. Okay, and if I was starting all over again and I could actually talk to my past self, I just would have started just right here. Just got here a lot quicker, right? With a lot less injuries, a lot more efficiently. Whereas what I did was I spent all this time going through the meathead training programs, chasing the burn, chasing the pump, right? Going through all this pain, making some progress, but I still wasn't even make as much as I could have. All right, so just by knowing how optimal hypertrophy works, you can actually, one, make more progress, and two, do it in less time and with less pain. Okay. Now let's actually, because I don't want to just make a claim but not actually be able to explain how this works, right? I believe you're intelligent. I believe you are rational, and I want to just explain with some simple concepts so you could see for yourself how you can actually build more muscle in less time with less pain using this strategy. Okay. So we got to start with a couple misconceptions. Like, right, you're probably like wondering, well, Jake, like, why do programs like this exist? Like, if I look up programs online, why do they all look like this? I watched, bodybuilders on YouTube, and they're doing stuff like this, and they're way bigger than you. So, like, you gotta, you gotta justify yourself, Jake. Okay. Here's the thing: when you got to be careful with online. Okay, because if you go to social media accounts, if you go to some of these bodybuilders, some of these guys are just hyper responders to steroids. You can literally build muscle sitting on the couch if you're a hyper responder to steroids. Okay, so you got to be careful with because me, I'm totally natural. I only coach people that are totally natural. So you really got to be careful when you just see these huge dudes that are on steroids that could just literally twiddle their thumbs all day and we're still get huge. Okay, and they can really get away with a lot of these suboptimal training principles and still make really good progress. Whereas it's a little bit different when we're fully natural. Okay, but here's why some of this stuff exists. Okay, so there used to be what's called the 3-part model, and it was a hypothesis that muscle damage plus metabolic stress plus mechanical tension equaled hypertrophy. Okay, this used to be hypothesized, right? Because there's always been researchers that they're trying to figure out how this stuff works, okay? And what we've come to learn is that muscle damage and metabolic stress actually do not contribute to hypertrophy. Okay, so just to kind of simplify, so muscle damage, you generate muscle damage like when you're doing a lot of these meathead training principles, right? When you are going like crazy, chasing the burn, chasing the pump, like this dude, right? Right, so it's like chase the burn, chase the pump, supersets, drop sets, partials, burnout. Right? So all this, the reason why people even consider doing stuff like this is because it was once hypothesized that muscle damage and metabolic stress were contributors to hypertrophy. But metabolic stress is like that burning sensation that you feel in the muscle. So if I was doing like a set of 30 on lateral raises, right, and by the time I get towards the end, I'm like, I feel like I have more energy to keep going, but that tingling, that burning in my shoulders is just making me stop. Okay, that's metabolic stress. But you can literally look this up. Now it's not even like contentious anymore. Like people just, like anybody that actually looks at the research just fully understands that mechanical tension is what actually drives hypertrophy. Okay, so what is mechanical tension? Okay, mechanical tension is the pulling force, right? So it's like the force that the muscle fibers experience, right? So if that doesn't make complete sense, it's okay. You'll still kind of be able to break down and understand how this works. Okay, so how I started to really, understand this when I started learning from Chris is I used to think that it was like, okay, I'm back. Just had to find this thought bubble. All right, so I used to think that, right, you got to tear down the muscle, right? You got to tear down the muscle, and then you build it back with the protein, right? That's what, like, if you ask just like a casual gym goer, like, yeah, I'm just trying to tear down the muscle, right? And then I'll build it back stronger. Right? That's kind of what you always hear. Okay, so that's what I used to think. I used to just think, I just got to tear down the muscle. I just thought every muscle was just like one muscle. Right, so I thought the bicep was just the bicep, the chest was just the chest, right? The tricep was just the tricep, the quads were just the quads, right? But what I came to learn after studying from Chris is that's not quite how it works. Okay, what's actually going on is each muscle is not just one muscle. Okay, each muscle is composed of hundreds of thousands of muscle fibers. And this is super, super important. Okay, when you understand this, it all starts to fall into place. Okay, so each muscle is hundreds of thousands of muscle fibers. Okay, mechanical tension can be applied to any of these fibers, right? So it can be applied to a small amount of these fibers or more of these fibers, right? But what's important to understand is the more muscle fibers we can apply mechanical tension to, the more hypertrophy we can create, right? So I'll kind of break this down with a little graphic, right? So imagine this guy, he's lying on the ground, or he's on a bench, and he's got his hands up right here, right? Let's do it like this, right? So he's on the bench, boom. Actually, I'll just take that off. Okay, and imagine I dropped a 70-pound weight right here. Right, so 70 pounds. So it's like, right, it's not heavy. It's not super heavy, but it's not super light either. Right, so 70 pounds. Okay, do you think he would have to give a little bit of effort or a lot of effort to hold this weight up? Right, it's not that heavy. So he would only have to give maybe a little bit of effort. Okay, so imagine in his brain, right, imagine there's a little battery right here. Okay, and because he's not giving that much effort to hold this weight up, right, what's happening is he only has to make a very small signal in his brain. Right, so it's like this. Oh my gosh, I can't even draw right now. Right, so he's got the small signal in his brain. Right? So this signal is going to correlate to how much effort he chooses to give. Okay? So because the weight's not super heavy, he doesn't have to give that much effort, therefore the signal is small. This signal is important because this signal is responsible for accessing the muscle fibers, activating the muscle fibers. Right? So if you want to gain access to more of these muscle fibers, you got to have a bigger signal. Right? So let's just say, for the sake of understanding this, let's just say this equals 20% of the muscle fibers. Okay. Then let's say I took away the 70-pound weight, and now I go ahead and I make this a 270-pound weight. Right? So now it's a big weight. Right, now it's 270 pounds. Okay, do you think it's going to take a little bit of effort or more effort to hold this 270-pound weight up? Right, it's going to take a lot more. So now the signal is going to be bigger. Okay, now bigger signal, that means maybe now he's gaining access to 70% of the muscle fibers. So way more. Okay, and you can only apply mechanical tension, that pulling force, to the muscle fibers that are activated, right? And the more muscle fibers that are activated, and the more muscle fibers we can apply mechanical tension to, the more hypertrophy we can create. Okay, and that's how you go from here to here in as efficient of a way as possible. Okay? Now, what's important to understand is our whole goal of optimal hypertrophy, our whole goal of programming, choosing what to do in the gym, choosing how much to do in the gym, what kind of intensity, what kind of reps. Our whole goal should be able to facilitate an environment where we can constantly gain access to as many muscle fibers as we can, apply mechanical tension to those fibers, and then slowly increase our ability to gain access to more muscle fibers. Okay, so when you're in this chase the burn mode, okay, what happens is you're doing so much volume, you have so much fatigue that's accumulated. You're essentially, what's happening is you're just capping out. Let's say this was your battery. You're capping out your ability, this maximum electrical signal that you can create at, like, let's say it's like 60%, just arbitrarily. Okay, and even though you're doing all this work, all this brute force, you're like banging your head against the wall because you can only actually get up to 60%. So it's like infuriating, right? Whereas when you're doing optimal hypertrophy, you can actually, by being strategic, by avoiding fatigue, by taking long rest periods, by using stable exercises, by avoiding lots of extra painful sensations, we can actually facilitate an environment where we can get, let's say arbitrarily, 85%. So what I did was, I was a noob. I tried to brute force my way. I probably got to 60% like after, 6 months. And then I just stayed here for a super long time, 2 years, just banging my head against the wall, right? Whereas when I finally learned how this stuff works, I immediately shot up to 85%, right? And what I wish I knew was just how to get to 85% just in the most linear path possible without having to do all this. Okay, and that's how I could have went straight here instead of getting all the way over here. So that's kind of how this works, right? So the whole reason, guys, why we use these optimal hypertrophy training principles is it's what allows us to be able to gain access to more muscle fibers, apply mechanical tension to those fibers, and therefore create more hypertrophy. Okay? And it's just amazing. For me, it's amazing, and I think it's really cool that it just so happens that the most optimal way to build muscle physiologically also happens to be a lot more time efficient, because doing low volume means you can get out of the gym earlier. Not chasing the pump means you can get out of the gym earlier, right? Not chasing the burn, right? It also happens that the optimal way to train is less painful, right? You don't have to go through these super painful high volume, right, chase the burn workouts to build muscle. Okay, so it's so cool that the best way to do it also happens to be easier, which normally in life I feel like it's the other way around. Normally it's like, you reap what you sow. But that's why I think this is such a gem, and that's why I want to share it with you, because I think, man, it's like I can build more and create more energy without feeling more drained, and be more efficient, more effective, and let that carry over to the other parts of my life, right? Okay, so I know this is complicated, but I'm going to go through one final experiment just to kind of demonstrate this. I think this will tie everything together. Okay, so look, on my Instagram, what I do is I just use experiments to demonstrate all these things. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to show you guys why, for example, long rest periods allows us to create this bigger signal. Okay, so over here, let's go. Okay, so look, I only take long rest periods. Let me show you why. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate 2 different exercises. On the first, I'm going to take 40 seconds of rest, and on the second, I'll take 2 minutes of rest. And I want to see how the difference in rest time affects my strength. Right, so for exercise number 1, I'm using the machine chest press. Right, I'm doing 200 pounds. I get a 7 rep max. Okay, so I couldn't do any more than 7. Right, now I immediately rest for 40 seconds. Okay, so I'm doing a short rest period. So this is what like a lot of the meathead programs would do, short rest periods. And notice this time I lose 4 reps off my max. So I'm 4 reps weaker with the short rest period. Okay, now for exercise number 2, same exact parameters of the experiment, starting with the 7 rep max again. Okay, so I get 230 pounds for 7. The only difference is this time I don't do the short rest period. I do a long rest period. So I rest for 2 full minutes. Okay, so now I'm not burning as much, feeling better, more rested, right? And now when I start set 2, you're going to notice I actually get to 6 reps. So I only lose 1 rep off my 7 rep max with the long rest period, whereas I lost 4 off the 7 rep max with the short period. So this extra strength, this is those extra reps that I got, that is the difference between the 60% and the 85%. Okay, we want to be able to design our program in a way that we're feeling incredibly strong on the few things that we do, rather than just like spacing out our effort across a million things. Okay, I like to think, imagine your effort that you had to spend was like a dollar bill, right? And in the gym, you could either divide that dollar bill up with 100 different pennies or 50 nickels, Or you could divide that dollar bill up with 10 dimes, right? So one, you're going to get to, you're going to deliver the same amount of effort, but one is a lot more effective, right? And the cool thing about it is when you're taking long rest periods, I have a lot of time in the gym. Sometimes I'll just listen to an audiobook or a podcast, right? And then also it makes it easier to stick to the gym when you can listen to stuff that you like, right? So there's little strategies that you can do. And this aligns a lot. This aligns with behavior change a lot better. So if the gym kind of feels like a chore to you, switching to optimal hypertrophy will help it become a lot more sustainable because it is easier. It's more reinforcing because you're going to see great results, and then also it's it is not quite as painful, so it's easier to stick to. Okay, so I know that was a little bit of a word salad. It's complicated stuff to explain all of this, but I hope this resonates with you. I hope I was able to kind of get the point across, and I hope I was able to justify the claim that I made at the start of the video, which is why I believe you can build more muscle in less time with less pain without having to become a meathead gym bro and just becoming a self-confident, optimal dude, right? Here's my vision for you. You can just be chilling on your machine, listening to your favorite podcast, and you can just go and look at all the dudes that are just cranking out the pump and just kind of smile and be like, yeah, I'm on a good path, right? That's my vision for you. If you have any questions on how this process works that I didn't quite go over, and you want to see how we can personalize and customize it to you and to your routine and to your gym, just go on Instagram and DM me the word optimize. Okay, and that means I'll know you came from here, and we can dig in a little bit more, and I'll be able to see if I can help. But thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video.